What if the story you've always believed about your Irish roots is only half the truth? When scientists compared the DNA of Irish Americans with people living in Ireland today, they found a pattern that doesn't erase Irish identity, it expands it. The results revealed a hidden chapter that links Ireland and Britain so tightly that the lines blur. This isn't a lab error. It's history, baked into bloodlines, spanning Ulster Plantations, border Reivers, Scottish clans, Viking ports, Norman castles, and royal pedigrees that mathematically spread into ordinary families. By the end, you may see your ancestry and yourself in a completely new light. Imagine opening your DNA report. You expect a clean, unmistakable signal: Ireland, full stop. Your grandparents said you were Irish. Your surname is Irish. Your traditions are Irish. But the results show something more complicated. Ireland mixed with Scotland, Northern England, even hints of Scandinavia or Norman Europe. Confusing until we put the history back into the picture. Across the Irish Sea, for more than 1,000 years, people, languages, faiths, and families moved in both directions. Borders shifted, kingdoms rose and fell, and communities intermarried. Modern genetics isn't contradicting your heritage, it's catching the echoes of those journeys. Let's begin where one of the biggest demographic shifts began: the plantation of Ulster in the early 1600s. The English crown encouraged large numbers of settlers from Scotland and northern England to move into Ireland's northern counties. They brought Presbyterian congregations, market towns, new farming methods, and surnames that still ring out today: Hamilton, Campbell, Graham, Johnston, Armstrong, Kerr, Elliot, Scott. Within a few generations, these settlers were born in Ireland, married in Ireland, and buried in Ireland. They spoke with Irish accents, worked Irish soil, and wove themselves into Irish life. But the genetic threads of lowland Scotland and the Anglo-Scottish border remained in their family trees. 2 centuries later, catastrophe struck. The Great Famine of the 1840s sent millions fleeing hunger and disease. Many emigrants were Gaelic Irish from Munster and Connaught, but sailing alongside them were large numbers from Ulster descendants of Scottish and Northern English settlers who had lived in Ireland for generations. When they arrived in America, the outside world collapsed nuances into a simpler label: Irish. Parish by parish, county by county, distinctions blurred. Over time, families repeated a single truth: our people came from Ireland, while the older layers of Scotland, Northern England, Norse, or Norman origins faded from memory. The Ulster Scots, often called Scots-Irish in the United States, formed one of the most influential streams in early American history. In the 1700s, they poured into Pennsylvania, then followed the Great Wagon Road into the Appalachian backcountry, down the Shenandoah Valley into Virginia, onto the Carolinas, then west into Tennessee and Kentucky. They cleared land, started mills, served as elders in new Presbyterian churches, and built tightly knit frontier communities. Their speech patterns, songs, and hard-earned pragmatism left a durable cultural imprint across Appalachia and the American South. Genetically, this means that many Irish-American families with Appalachian roots show stronger signatures of the Scottish lowlands and northern England, signals that mirror the Ulster Bridge between Ireland and Britain. Before Ulster, another frontier shaped these lineages: the Anglo-Scottish borderlands, home to the border Reivers. For centuries, families such as the Armstrongs, Nixons, Grahams, Bells, Irvings, Maxwells, and Elliots navigated a harsh marchland where survival depended on kinship, horsemanship, and loyalty to clan-like surnames. When the Crown pacified the border and dismantled that way of life, many Reiver families were transplanted to Ulster. Some of their descendants later crossed the Atlantic. In American family trees, this Reiver past can surface as a combined Northern English, Lowland Scottish genetic profile, plus surnames with deep border roots. The cultural legacy, strong kin ties, a fierce sense of honor, and frontier self-reliance traveled too, shaping the ethos of early backcountry America. The Scottish connection runs deeper still. Long before the plantation, a Gaelic kingdom called Dál Riata linked northeast Ireland and western Scotland more than 1,500 years ago. People moved freely across the North Channel, families intermarried, language and culture flowed in both directions. Later, lowland Scots traveled to Ulster in large numbers. Over centuries, the lines between Irish and Scottish along that coast became a living continuum rather than a hard border. That is why modern DNA often groups Ireland and Scotland together, or Scotland with Northern England. The populations are cousins, separated more by politics and time than by biology. Then come the other layers. Viking seafarers arrived in the 8th and 9th centuries. Some raided, many settled. They founded ports like Dublin, Waterford, and Limerick, intermarried with local communities in Ireland and Scotland, and left a Norse imprint that shows up in both places. The Normans followed after 1066 in England and after 1169 in Ireland, with families like de Burgh, Burke, Fitzgerald, Fitzmaurice, Butler, and Power. Over generations, they became more Irish than the Irish themselves, yet their origins remained part of the genetic mosaic. Each wave didn't erase the last, it layered on top of it. The result isn't a pie cut into neat national slices, but a tapestry where Irish, Scottish, English, Norse, and Norman threads are woven side by side. This brings us to royal bloodlines and why they're more common than most people imagine. Go back 25 generations, roughly 700 years. In a simple model, you'd have up to 33 million ancestor slots. Real life compresses this through pedigree collapse, cousins marrying cousins somewhere in your tree. So many of those slots are filled by the same individuals over and over. Medieval populations were smaller, and elites tended to have lines that were better preserved and more widely branched. As generations pass, descendants of medieval kings and nobles spread into every social class. That means ordinary families today often carry at least one path, sometimes several that connect back to a medieval monarch or notable house. If your documented lines or DNA matches touch Anglo-Norman surnames in Ireland or minor border nobility, it's not a royal fantasy, it's statistical gravity over time. You can see these dynamics reflected in the stories of well-known Irish-American families. Political dynasties that trace lines to Ulster congregations in early Pennsylvania and New England. Cultural icons whose grandparents came from Antrim, Down, or Derry Londonderry with distinctly Scottish or border surnames. Business leaders whose pedigrees intersect with old Norman Irish families that arrived from England or Wales centuries ago. None of this makes those families less Irish. It simply mirrors how Irish identity has long embraced people whose deeper roots include Scotland and England, families who lived in Ireland for generations and then crossed the Atlantic as Irish. So why do DNA results often label ancestry as Ireland and Scotland or Scotland and Northern England, sometimes with a side of Scandinavian? Because the genetic signals across these regions overlap heavily. Continuous migration, intermarriage, and shared early medieval origins make it difficult and sometimes impossible to draw sharp genetic borders that never existed in lived history. In Ulster, a Scottish lowland profile is common. In Western Scotland, a Gaelic Irish profile is common. Along many coasts, Norse traces appear on both sides of the water. Overlap isn't a flaw, it's the fingerprint of a shared past. What does this mean for your story? If your family has always said, "We're Irish," and your DNA shows Scotland or Northern England, you're not discovering a contradiction, you're rediscovering context. Ulster Scots ancestors who lived and died in Ireland are fully part of Irish history and culture, while their older genetic layers still reflect the lowlands and the border counties. If your results show Norman or Scandinavian hints, they're echoes of medieval arrivals who became Irish over centuries. The science didn't reduce your identity, it completed it. If you want to follow the breadcrumbs further, combine genetics with records. Start with your strongest DNA matches tied to specific counties in Ulster: Antrim, Down, Derry, Londonderry, Tyrone, Armagh. Map clusters of surnames: Campbell, Graham, Kerr, Elliott, Johnston, Hamilton, Scott, alongside parish registers, Presbyterian session minutes, estate papers, and Griffith's valuation. If your trail runs through Pennsylvania before the 1770s, follow the Great Wagon Road, York and Lancaster west to the Cumberland Valley, then down the Shenandoah into Virginia and the Carolinas. Track church migration. Meeting houses often moved community by community. If you see Norman Irish surnames like Burke, Butler, Fitzgerald, Power, Nugent, or de Courcy, explore medieval pedigrees and land records. A single documented link in the 1700s or 1600s can ladder you back several more centuries. And where paper fades, use triangulated DNA matches across independent lines to test hypotheses before you accept them. Now for the revelation. The story of Ireland cannot be told without Britain, and the story of Britain cannot be told without Ireland. For centuries, their people shaped one another's destinies. Bloodlines crossed, histories merged. The descendants of Gaelic farmers, Ulster Scots settlers, border Reivers, Norse traders, Norman knights, and yes, occasionally medieval kings carried those connections across the ocean. Many now call America home. The DNA didn't rewrite history, it reminded us of it, and it invites you to finish the chapter your family started generations ago. If this journey changed how you see your own origins, take the next step. Revisit your DNA matches with fresh eyes, layer and county level records from Ulster and Western Scotland, trace the Great Wagon Road if your line runs through Appalachia, and test your paper trail against what the genetics suggests. And if you want more deep dives into hidden bloodlines, forgotten kingdoms, ancient clans, and the surprising truths buried in British and Irish history, subscribe and turn on notifications so you never miss what your DNA has been trying to tell you all along.